Hello everybody and welcome back to this tutorial, and right now what we're going to do is we're going to cover vulnerability analysis with two different tools which I'm going to show you in this video. Now what we did by now is we performed advanced nmap scanning, we performed firewall evasion, IDS, IPS invasion, we saw what honeypots are, and now we need to find out how we can actually discover after a certain scan which open ports are running vulnerable softwares and which are not. Now we simply do that just by finding out what version of service is running on an open port, and then we throw it in some different tools such as the Searchsploit, which I'm going to show you right now, and we can actually see whether that specific software is vulnerable to some type of the attack. So right now let us start with opening our terminal first of all, and the first software which I'm going to show you is called Searchsploit. So simply just type in your terminal Searchsploit. As it already comes pre-installed in Kali Linux, so we will already have it, and what we're going to see right here is simply some kind of the options that are basically available for this specific tool. As we can see, here are some of the examples that you can actually use in order to run this tool. These are different options in which are currently not interested because we don't really need to know all of this in order to run this tool, and some notes right here which you can actually read if you'd like. Now, in order to actually use this tool, let us perform a scan on a certain target. And in this case, our target will be my router. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to simply just type the nmap command with the service version option enabled. And how we can do that is simply just typing dash and then S and capital V, which stands for actually scanning the target and discovering versions running on open ports. And the next thing I'm going to do is going to add the capital F option, and the only reason I'm actually using this capital F option is because we can actually perform this scan a lot faster since it is only scanning first 100 top ports instead of first 1000 top ports. And therefore we don't really need to wait that long in order for this to finish, and I will simply leave it just like this, and I will type the IP address of my router. Now once again, if you'd like to find out the IP address of your router, you can simply just open in terminal or open up terminal and simply just type netstat-nr, and right below this gateway column right here, the first IP address is going to be the IP address of your actual router or of your gateway. Okay, let me just close this so we can see that the actual scan has finished. We can see that it discovered 3 open ports. So the first port is TCP. This is the FTP port running on 21. 23 is open port and 80 is also an open port. Now we can see that first 2 ports are actually TCP wrapped, and the only actual port which is open and on which we were actually able to discover the version of service running is the port 80. As we can see, port 80 is open, it is running over HTTP, we already knew that, and the version of the actual software running on there is actually Allegro ROM Pager 4.07 UPnP. And we can see some different options right here as well. So now that you actually performed the scan, which we already knew how to do all of this from the previous videos, now the next thing to do is simply just copy the name of this software. So right click, copy, and what we can do right now is we can actually use the Searchsploit tool in order to see whether this software is vulnerable to some type of the attack or not. So how we can do that is, let me just clear the screen. I can simply just type Searchsploit, and right after I type Searchsploit, I will simply just paste the actual name of the software, press here enter, and we can see that we do actually get some of the results back. As we can see, exploit title, we can see that the matching software is correct, as it is the same thing as we typed right here, and the actual attack that we can perform onto this version is HTTP request remote denial of service. Now, as we can see down here, there are no results for shellcode, so we have not any shellcodes available for this attack. And right here, we can actually see the path to the actual file which contains the exploit for this specific attack. Now, if you want to, you can simply just go to this file, In order to actually find it, you can simply just type locate, and let's try to locate the first directory, which is exploits. So locate exploits, press here enter. Here are the exploits, so we will simply just copy all of this right here, so the entire path, user share exploit db exploits. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cd to there. And let me just see what were the remaining directories. So multiple and then DOS, and I will copy right away this actual name so I don't have to remember this number. I will copy this and I will change my directory to multiple/DOS. So cd multiple, let's clear the screen, and right here cd to DOS. And if I just simply type nano and then I paste the name of the file, it will open up the actual exploit that is used for that version of software on my router that actually performs HTTP remote request DOS attack. As we can see right here, Allegro ROM pager is prone to a remote denial of service vulnerability. Successfully exploiting this issue allows remote attackers to reboot affected devices, resulting in denial of service condition. Require net HTTPS URL, so we can see URL right here. Headers, okay. Authorization is basic, and what that means is I will show you just in 1 second. And here we have Shodan, which is something that I will show you right after. But before we actually do that, let me just first of all lower this screen. And what basic authorization means is that simply if I just open my IP address of my router, it will open this window right here, which requests for username and password. And anytime you actually see something like this, it is most likely going to be the basic authorization. And this is sent in the actual HTTP packet. And this below right here is simply just specifying the username and password. In this case, it is trying to actually type more characters than available. What this will do is it will most likely crash this software right here once you actually try to log in to the actual router. So it is also some kind of a buffer overflow attack, I believe. And we can see this actual part of code right here. It is coded in Ruby, and we can see that simply just by checking out the extension, which is .rb. Now, I have never coded in Ruby, but I'm guessing that this is creating the actual header and the actual packet, which then we are going to send with this command to the actual router, and therefore we are going to crash it. We simply discovered the actual exploit for our router, which is going to perform some kind of a denial of service attack. Now we know that this actual router is vulnerable, at least to this attack. Now, if you wanted to, for example, check out something else, if it is vulnerable, for example, you found out some Apache version and you want to see whether that version is vulnerable to something, you can simply just specify Searchsploit and then Apache. And right here, we can see that we get listed out a bunch of the Apache exploits which are currently available and that we can use. Right here are the actual versions of Apache. As we can see, for example, Apache 1.3.12, WebDev directory listings. So this is the actual vulnerability or the actual attack that you can perform onto this version. And I believe that all of the previous versions also are vulnerable to this attack. So for example, if version 1.4 is vulnerable to the APR denial of service, I believe that then all of the previous versions are also vulnerable to the actual same attack. But it doesn't have to be. In most cases it is, but it doesn't have to be. Okay, so right here, let's see, for example, I will scan my actual laptop. First of all, I will simply just start the service Apache 2 on my laptop, and we're going to scan and see which version of Apache 2 is running on my laptop machine, and then we're going to throw it in the Searchsploit and see whether that is some vulnerable version and whether there are some specific attacks for that specific version. So we will perform a simple nmap scan, and we are going to use SV for discovering the version, and then P for actual port, and we will specify port 80, and then 192.168.1.15, which is the actual IP address of my actual laptop. And right here, let me just see, it has already finished, and we can discover that the version of the actual Apache 2 running on an open port 80 is Apache HTTPD 2.4.18. So I will simply just copy this right here, and I will type Searchsploit paste. And as we can see, Searchsploit didn't manage to actually find any exploits for this specific version, which basically means that it is a safe version and that it doesn't have any attacks for it yet. Now, it doesn't mean that in the future it will not discover some types of exploits for these versions as well, but for now on there are no known exploits for this actual version. As we can see right here, exploits no result and shellcodes no result. So that is one of the tools that I actually wanted to show you for discovering vulnerable softwares. It is really good, especially once you combine it with the nmap scan and the -sv option in the nmap scan for discovering versions. Then you can simply just throw those versions of software into the Searchsploit and discover whether there are some specific exploits for them. Now, the next thing that I wanted to show you would be the actual Shodan, which is a website. It is simply a search engine that allows you to actually find different vulnerable machines, computers or devices over the internet. So right here, if you simply just go to your search bar and type Shodan, press here enter, and here is the actual little description. So Shodan is a search engine that lets the user find specific types of computers connected to the internet using a variety of filters. Some have also described it as a search engine of service banners, which are metadata that the server sends back to the client. So in order to visit the website, simply just click on Shodan. It will open up the actual Shodan page, and up here in the left corner, in the left corner, you will have the option to actually input the IP address that you want to, for example, explore. Now let me just see what happens if I simply just click explore right here without specifying any IP address. We can see some featured categories, databases, video games, industrial control systems, top voted, webcam, best IP cam search I have found yet. Let me just see right here. So video web server, and here we have different IP addresses. One, for example, and right here, so we clicked on a random IP address, we can see some of the information for it, such as, for example, city, country, organization, ISP, last update, host names, ACN. Now the web technologies that it is running is also available right here, so we can see XTJS, prototype, and Synology DiskStation. And we can also see that there are some vulnerabilities for this specific IP address. So this actual IP address has some open ports, which we can see right here. And some of those ports are probably running some vulnerable software, as we can see. This actual vulnerability right here, remotely observable behavior in authentication, GSS2 in OpenSSH. So this is an actual vulnerability for the port 22, which is running OpenSSH version 7.4, which we can see right here. Could be used by remote attackers to detect existence of users on a target system when GSS2 is in use. Note, the discoverer states, we understand that the OpenSSH developers do not want to treat us such a username enumeration as a vulnerability. Okay, so this is not really that big of a vulnerability, but it can be used to actually discover the usernames on that specific target. Now, another vulnerability right here, as we can see, the process dash open, or pardon me, process underscore open function in SFTP server in OpenSSH before 7.6 does not properly prevent write operations in read-only mode, which allows attackers to create zero-length files. So these are the two vulnerabilities that the Shodan managed to find for this specific IP address, as well as it discovered some open ports. So let us check out another IP address. For example, let's go with this one. We'll simply just type it right here. So this one is from Czech Republic. Now I'm not even going to try to read this. For example, Novi Jičín. I'm not really sure how to pronounce the actual town name. As we can see right here, we do not have any vulnerabilities, which doesn't really mean that it doesn't have them. I would always combine, for example, Shodan with nmap scan, with Searchsploit, and discover as many things as we can about the target. As we can see, these are the open ports on the target. So port 22, port 83, port 85, and port 1723. Let's see if they actually have 1723 vendor Linux. So not really much information about that specific port 1723. So let's leave this actual IP address. Let's go to this one, which will be the last one that we actually check. So you can simply just check out random IP addresses if you'd like. We can see a bunch of different information about port running Apache, which is port 80. or in this case 443, so Apache over HTTPS, but it also does have port 80 opened. Now what you can actually do is you can simply just try to, for example, copy this IP address and paste it right here and try to see what happens once you actually try to search that IP address in the Google search bar, whether it will open some kind of a page. Now let's see what it is running on actual port 80. It is running webcam HTTPD server SQ webcam. So on port 80 there should be a webcam, which possibly means that there is going to be an actual login page in order to be able to connect there. The thing that we are interested in is that you can, for example, if you find out the IP address of your target, you can simply just use this search bar up here and specify some kind of an IP address. As we can see, here is some by default. You can simply just search it and we can see the actual information for our target. And in our case, the target is currently located in the United States. The organization and the ISP which it is running is Cloudflare, the web technologies or Google Front API and Zepto. And right here are some of the open ports for that specific target. So you can also use this to input the IP address right here and discover as much information as you can. So that would be basically about it. My best advice for the vulnerability analysis is to actually combine all three with also some of the different tools. If you want to, you can search on the internet. There are a bunch of other tools used for actually vulnerability analysis and discovering vulnerable softwares. I just show you some of them. But you can combine most of them and discover as much information as you can in order to be able to successfully plan out the rest of your attack. Okay, so that will be about it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it and I hope I will see you in the next one. Bye!